A very open race, but when isn't it an open race, the Grand National? But we've got to sift through some of these, sort them out. You've got Point Barrow and Doire as joint favourites. Point Barrow, first of all, the Irish National winner last year.
Well, let's look at those two horses, Robert. Point Barrow, a good winner, as we saw there, of the Irish Grand National. It has to be pointed out that that was a very slow time on good ground, 22 seconds slower than the norm. If you go back a couple of years ago, he started a very warm favourite for the 4-mile chase at Cheltenham as well. Failed to deliver, apparently not staying. Now, it might sound ridiculous to say he won't stay. He won over 3 and 5. He's ended his campaign with a decent run over hurdles. My worry about him, although he's a very safe jumper and trained by a very good trainer and ridden by Philip Carberry, who's really excelled in recent years, my worry about him is that he may not just get the trip. I could see him being bang there with every chance, but possibly not finding a great deal in the business end of things.
Now, the other joint favourite, Doire, trained by Tony Martin, who we all know is a real shrewie. How much of that factor is in on the price? Because last time, when he won at Down Royal, it was he won, but it was the most unimpressive performance. So it certainly wouldn't make me rush out and back him for the Grand National.
I think the Tony Martin factor is certainly built into the price there as well. He was a revelation last year, Doire. He won the Thyestes, he won the William Hill at Cheltenham. He went £50 through the ratings. A very good horse indeed. I did feel, however, that this year he was tending to get himself a little bit outpaced in his races. He was coming from way off a pace, especially at Navan a few starts back when he was second under Davy Russell, a race that Davy Russell was criticised for, and as it transpires, wrongly so. He won at Down Royal, didn't set the world on fire, but he did win, so you have to hand it to him on that score. I feel with him, his chances could be compromised by the fact that he may just get outpaced, and a race like the National, it's very hard to come from behind. I think the crucial race we saw there was the At the Races Bobby Joe chase, where Homer Wells was a comfortable winner. Point Barrow back in third, with Numbersixvalverde staying on really well over 3 miles in a furlong to finish fourth on that occasion, coming from what appeared to be a most uncompromising position, 5 or 6 fences out, where he was virtually tailed off but stayed on really well. That's a very informative race. You can go back to the archive and look at that race again and again, and it would give you loads of hope for Numbersixvalverde. But going back to Point Barrow and Doire, Point Barrow, I feel he might just struggle with the trip. Good safe jumper, he'll certainly get round. Doire, I feel, might just get himself undone by the fact that he's way out the back. Although he'll be coming home through beaten horses, he might just get himself too far back in the race itself. Simon, I thought, that was a very, very encouraging performance at Southwell, and as you rightly said, it would be a great story. With the Rymal association with Cheltenham, I think he'll get round as well.
I think he'll get round because a lot of people, he made a bad mistake at Southwell, but didn't really look like falling. I've talked to John Spearing, I've talked to Andrew Thornton, and they think that the bigger fence. He's not a very big horse, but they think that he's basically a very good jumper. Granted, lack of any traffic problems, but he'll jump round safely. And if he does, I think he's a horse that sort of seems to get better and stronger as the race goes on. I think he'll stay on strongly. Well,
very much so, and his season has been geared up towards this. He's had plenty of time in between his races, and I reckon he's going to get there a really fresh horse. The Grand National, a great race for fairy tales. The Rymals have a terrific association with the race over the years, and it would be a wonderful story. I think he's just possibly not good enough this year, but possibly next year when he's a year older again. But a very interesting contender.
Now, anyone wanting to have a bet and back a horse that's going to give you a good run for your money, surely Hedgehunter. He won it 2 years ago. He ran a smashing race last year. He was beaten by Numbersixvalverde. He was second. And he should get round, and he must play a part, mustn't he?
Well, he's had a terrific record around Aintree. In fact, a runner-up in the Gold Cup. That was a great performance. And arguably, he achieved more last year when finishing runner-up than he did the year he won it. A very, very good horse indeed. Somewhat disappointing his reappearance over hurdles, but certainly a horse that you couldn't rule out because he's got such a good record around the track. A top-class chaser with a little bit of class, and very often class always prevails.
Ferdy Murphy's done very well. He did very well in the Irish Grand National. Had Ninda Savola, who ran very well. He's got Joes Edge in the Grand National, who finished a long way behind Numbersixvalverde and Co. last year at Aintree. He finished 7th in that. But since then, he won at the Cheltenham Festival, won pretty well. Don't know how good the form of that race is. Juvenier didn't run too well in the Irish National. Is he a player?
I really fancied him for the race last year, and I thought he was a little bit disappointing. He did do very well at Cheltenham, it has to be said, under an inspired Davy Russell to get up in the shadows of the post. But you just wonder if that was a hard race. He had a tough time that day. Davy Russell didn't miss him on the run up to the line from the last. the horses who ran in the race as well disappointed in the Irish Grand National subsequently, and I think that his chance in the National might be compromised by that excellent win at Cheltenham.
Tony McCoy has just won his first Irish Grand National. He won the other day on Butler's Cabin. He's never won the Aintree Grand National. He rides Lamy for Francois Dumaine. Could this be his year?
There's every possibility. I mean, Lamy's a very, very decent horse indeed. Dumaine's had a fair degree of success at Aintree as a whole, as a meeting. Tony McCoy's been luckless in the Grand National, but write him off at your peril. Lamy would have chances of sorts, but I think there are better prospects in the field
He
itself.
gave Cato Star a bit of a fright at Newbury, didn't he?
He very much so. I mean, he's a very, very classy type indeed. You'd have to wonder, Robert, again with him, whether he'd possibly just get the trip at Aintree with Lamy. But it's a pretty decent ride nevertheless, and I'm sure he wouldn't swap it for anything else.
Another popular choice, we'll just move on in a moment, but Billyvoddan for Henry Daly. He's been in quite good form. He finished third at the Cheltenham Festival behind Tyrannus and R. Vic. I could see him running pretty well. I think he's, he stays well. He's a pretty safe jumper.
I really like him, Robert, and I think Billyvoddan's a horse you'd have to give serious consideration to. He's had a quiet enough campaign. He was a decent novice hurdler, and he's made a much better fist of things over fences. I was very impressed with him when we saw him winning on the VT there a while ago. He's a very good horse, Billyvoddan. Trevor Hemmings, his owner, has a great record in the race. And once again, the yard, the Henry Daly yard, successor to Tim Foster, another yard with great success associated with the Grand National. Billyvoddan, a very serious contender in my book.
Just before we move on and discuss some longer shots, Idle Talk, he's moved yards from Tom George to Donald McCain. That's certainly a good yard to move to, the McCain yard. His jumping worries me a bit.
Possibly worries him. Jumping might worry you a little bit. He was a little bit unlucky in the Gold Cup because I think Beaver Salmon was the culprit there, sort of bulked him and knocked his pilot out the door. Having said that, he didn't have a hard race. He didn't have a race at all, I suppose, really, in the Gold Cup. What better yard could you be associated with for the Grand National? Couldn't be at a better address. He'll go there fresh and well. If he jumps, he'd have to be a serious contender, once again, for Trevor Hemmings.
Fourth in the Gold Cup, of course, was Munker Hostin, but he'll fit in the category of outsiders. We can look at some more contenders now, some outsiders to consider for the 2007 Grand National.
The AtTheRaces.com Grand National Preview, brought to you by Sky Bet.